Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome all the foreign participants in Bratislava and welcome you all here at the Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs. And I want to thank the Slovak Foreign Policy Association for hosting this conference, and I'm sure that your discussion will be useful and fruitful as always, and I'm looking forward to see the recommendations and outcomes of your discussion today. So it's my pleasure to address you here. The issue is very topical. It's not easy to speak about Ukraine these days, unfortunately. But let me start by making a few remarks about the Eastern Partnership policy, about its achievements so far, about the challenges we are facing today. And then in the second part, I'd like to share with you some reflections on recent development in Ukraine as we see them and Ukrainians' European aspirations. And still, before turning to this very topic, I would like to make a couple of comments on the current situation in the European Union and our responsibilities abroad, especially in our neighborhood. There is nothing new to say that the debt crisis in Europe is an unprecedented challenge. And sometimes the whole concept of European identity is being put under question. And we should have no illusions. The situation is serious, but at the same time, it's clear that it's not desperate and there is no reason to be desperate. We have our destiny in our hands. And we still have the ability to take decisive actions and to adapt them, to implement them. And of course, we all have to take responsible decisions and responsible actions. If we want to ask for support from the others, we have to show that we are doing our homework and we are responsible to ourselves and to the others in the first place. Even in these challenging times, we should not forget that there is life outside of the European Union. There are states and people living in our neighborhood, and we want to have them on our side. We want them to share our standards and values rather than to let them open space for instability and turbulences. We should not get lost in our internal problems, internal European problems, and leave behind our ambitions to play an active role in providing stability and prosperity outside of the European Union. We must lead by example, especially in our direct periphery. And this is not only about ambitions, it's also about our interests and our responsibility. I remember vividly the times when my country, Slovakia, set off for democracy, rule of law, and market economy. And I remember the important role the European perspective played in our reform endeavors. A vision was offered to us at that time, a vision to become part of Europe, which is united, peaceful, and prosperous. A democratic Europe, respecting human rights and dignity of each individual. It is of utmost importance to keep this vision alive. And therefore, the Eastern Partnership project was launched in 2009 with the ambitions to promote political association, economic integration, and visa liberalization between the European Union and our partner countries. Eastern Partnership is a long-term and open-ended project, which means that it does not automatically lead to an EU membership, but definitely it doesn't rule it out either, and that's very important. It's important to understand that the end stage of the process is what we make out of it. It's what the Eastern partners make out of it. So it will depend on them whether it will be a substitute to enlargement or a way to enlargement. More and more, the European perspective for Moldova is being mentioned, which was not the case before the Eastern Partnership program was launched. And this shows that what will be the final end stage of the Eastern Partnership will very much depend on how serious our Eastern partners are in accepting the rules of the game, which is called Eastern Partnership. Let me mention some positive changes that the project of Eastern Partnership has brought to the European Union and its Eastern neighbors so far. Major progress has been achieved in the economic sphere. Negotiations on free trade agreements have advanced, and it is even more noticeable that partner countries have made substantial effort to approximate to the legal frameworks of the European Union markets. Although the agenda of mobility has shown a slower progress than expected by our partners, several significant steps ahead have been made towards visa-free regimes, in particular with Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. Sector-wide cooperation has brought concrete results in areas such as border management, transport, environment, energy, and social protection. And last but not least, one of the major assets of the Eastern Partnership has been its multilateral dimension, which favors the promotion of exchanges and experiences and the creation of communities of business people, scientists, students, and representatives of the civil society. Positive achievements could be found in these areas as well. My general assessment, although a preliminary one, is that since the launch of the Eastern Partnership project, it has proven its value and its continued relevance. It offers good prospects of modernization for the partner countries to the east of the European Union border based on mutual benefits. It is crucial to understand that Eastern Partnership is a program for our Eastern partners. It's certainly not against anybody, and particularly not against Russia. We have achieved a great deal, but much more remains to be done to exploit the full potential of the Eastern Partnership. There is no time for complacency at all. My commentary would not be accurate without mentioning three following facts. First, in the last 3 years since the launch of the Eastern Partnership project, uneven progress has been made in respective countries. Second, and at the same time, the enthusiasm of our Eastern partners seems to be fading in general. And third, in many neighboring countries there is not enough understanding and therefore lack of popular demand for greater political association or economic integration with the European Union. We did expect stronger public support for the program, which would certainly make a stronger impact on the elites, on the politicians of those countries. And since this pressure is lacking, there is no much enthusiasm or not enough enthusiasm to undertake steps and reforms that would bring these countries closer to the European Union. Now, let me offer a few remarks on the current state of play in Ukraine. Again, here in Slovakia, we have learned from our own experience how difficult it is to establish democratic conditions. We know the price of it, and we know its irreplaceable role in the transformation of our society. Ukraine has made efforts in the area of democratization in the last years. However, in the recent time, we have witnessed some regressive tendencies regarding the domestic democratic achievements. We closely follow the developments in Ukraine, the current political developments in the country in general, and the election process in particular. Here in Slovakia, Ukraine is not a theoretical or foreign policy issue. It's a reality. Ukraine is our neighbor, and the developments in Ukraine are affecting the life of tens of thousands of our citizens. So that's the perspective we are taking when discussing the situation in Ukraine. With regard to the parliamentary elections, we welcomed its peaceful conduct of the parliamentary elections. It's clear that the citizens could freely express their will. The election turnout confirmed the interests of Ukrainian people in building a democratic state. On the other hand, we also note that the OSCE ODIHR preliminary assessments of the elections and the election campaign pointed to some significant shortcomings. The most serious obstacle was impeding the participation of several leading opposition politicians in the elections due to politically motivated trials. On top of it, unclear situation in some district committees raised our concerns as well, and these concerns were clearly expressed by the joint statement of Lady Ashton and Stefan Füle. We hope and believe that these issues will be addressed in a way that respects voters' choice. We expect that the new Ukrainian parliament will support and contribute to further democratization of the country. We are interested in continuing the political and economic transformation of Ukraine, deepening bilateral relations, and pursuing political dialogue between the European Union and Ukraine. And therefore, we encourage Ukraine and its political leaders to continue reform processes in line with the association agenda and based on European values and principles. The fact is that the European Union acknowledges the European aspirations of Ukraine, and that's clearly stated in the association agreement text. Taking into consideration the overall situation in Ukraine after the elections, there is a question arising on how to advance with the Ukrainian EU rapprochement. The association agreement, including the DCFTA component, which has been negotiated between the European Union and Ukraine and has been initialed last March, have the potential to secure deeper long-term relations with the European Union on the basis of increased trade opportunities, approximation to the EU acquis, and the overall modernization of Ukraine's institutions and governance. Ukrainian side is expected to address the cases of selective justice first. In order to determine the next steps in the EU-Ukraine relations, the overall Ukrainian performance will be taken into account. Visible improvement of the rule of law in Ukraine is essential for the signing of the association agreement. Ukraine's performance, notably in relations to respect for common values and for the rule of law, will be of crucial importance for the speed of its political association and economic integration with the European Union. Slovakia has been providing its assistance and is ready to continue with our transition and integration experience, which we are ready to share via our official development assistance and also through the Center for Transfer of Experience from Integration and Reforms. When speaking about practical examples of our support, the National Convention for European Integration in Ukraine, which is a project launched back in 2010 with Slovakia's assistance and with the substantial support of the Slovak Foreign Policy Association, should be mentioned here. This project is similar to the one implemented in my country during our EU accession process. The convention is designed to develop the strategies and mechanisms of communication with civil society, and the goal is to better inform the population about the reforms promoted by the respective governments. As I have mentioned before, promoting political association and economic integration between the European Union and Ukraine is not only about our responsibility, it's also about our own and our common interests. Ukraine is our biggest neighbor with a huge potential of economic cooperation. And what's the reality? Let the statistics speak for themselves. The volume of trade turnover between Ukraine and the Slovak Republic totaled to 1.080 billion euro in 2011. And just to compare, the trade turnover between Slovakia and Austria, which is a country with less than a sixth of the population of Ukraine, is more than 5 times as large. We are searching for new markets worldwide, in Asia, in Latin America, and Middle East, in the so-called BRICS countries, and rightly so. But we often forget about our closest neighbor, or we are unable mutually to exploit the existing potential. The reality is that we don't use the potential of the Ukrainian market by far. In this regard, a question might arise concerning the possibility of a provisional application of the association agreement and DCFTA, or some parts of it. And I can say that I've been in favor of this idea, putting this agreement into work, and there has been moderate support for this idea on a provisional basis. I'm just afraid that after these elections, which it's still not over because we still don't have figures, it will be very, very difficult, if not impossible, to have this step made. We will certainly discuss this and we will agree on necessary steps in the European Union frameworks at the next meeting of EU foreign ministers. It's definitely in our interest to consider thoroughly all the possibilities for furthering our economic and trade relations with our Eastern partner. And I hope that you will also discuss this point later in the panels of this conference, and I'm really interested to see what your recommendations will be. There is as well another aspect I would like to mention without going much into details, and it's the cooperation in the field of energy security. Although it's not Kiev but Moscow who supplies us with energy, Ukraine, as the biggest gas transit state in Europe and for Europe, plays a crucial role in advancing our energy security. Around 80% of all Russian gas destined for Europe arrives through this route. The gas reaches as many as 12 EU member states, as well as Western Balkan countries and Turkey, which means current and potential candidate countries. It is in Europe's strategic interest to keep the gas coming through this road. Any other solution is economically less interesting. Ukraine will stay an important transit route for gas to Europe for the foreseeable future. And this is the case regardless of the realization of alternative routes. Given this fact, the energy security should be a quintessence of our cooperation with Ukraine. Correct me if I'm mistaken, but it seems to me that we often do not prove it by our actions. We like to pretend it's not right to politicize issues of rather commercial nature. This is another issue to be discussed thoroughly during this conference, as I understand, and again, I will be interested to see what conclusions you have made on this topic. Despite all the difficulties, one thing is clear. European Union and Ukraine have a lot to offer to each other, and this potential is not being used to the mutual advantage. At the same time, Ukraine should finally understand that it cannot win if it continues scoring own goals. It's crucially important for Ukraine to set a clear strategic direction. To paraphrase my friend Karl Bildt, if one wants to go everywhere, he will most likely end up nowhere. We are ready to support Ukraine and the other Eastern partners in their European aspirations, But the conditionality, more for more and less for less, will remain the basic principle defining our approach, not only with regard to Ukraine, but with regard to the whole Eastern Partnership project. I strongly believe that the next Eastern Partnership Summit in Vilnius, which is scheduled for autumn next year, will be a key event for our Eastern partners and for European Union's Eastern policy. I wish, and it is our common interest, to present a success story at that summit. And I wish this success story was Ukraine, but I'm afraid as things stand now, it's not going to be the case. Thank you very much for your attention.